nobly. Welcome to Feminist Baking, and look to your sins, for the night is dark and full of patriarchy. But not on this show! Oh my god!
Every single female character on this show is awesome!
This show has all the right representations of women. It's got realism, it's got depth, it's got variety, it's got a few too many bare breasts for my liking, but all in all, it's pretty dang good. In fact, I'd say the representation of women in this show is so good that Game of Thrones is something of a feminist masterpiece. Sounds like a stretch, I know, but I'll argue my case while baking...
Look, the pie!
That's right, Joffrey's wedding pie. So let's get cracking while I tell you all about the wonderful Westerosi feminism. George R.R. Martin and subsequently TV creators David Benioff and D.B. Weiss have written Game of Thrones to deliberately subvert many of the common stereotypes found in the fantasy genre. The vast majority of popular fantasy stories are set in a proto-medieval Europe, with a simplistic good versus evil story.
The heroes are flawless, predestined chosen ones, divinely ordained kings, etc. And the big baddie is a real big baddie, a dragon or a warlock or a demon. They feature noble knights who always treat women with respect, and the women are lovely, beautiful and kind, sometimes helpful to the plot, but generally pushed to the side. Aside from the occasional maiden warrior or sorceress, women are mostly seen and not heard.
But Game of Thrones says screw the dualism, let's see how people really act. No one on that show is purely good or evil. The show does not shy away from the horrors of war or the way that women were treated every day with subjugation and being demeaned. Because of its strong base in the reality of everyday medieval Europe, this series kind of bridges a gap between fantasy and straight-up historical fiction, with its roots in the War of the Roses and its illumination of a world in which lives were nasty, brutish, and short. And I like this realism because it's not whitewashing history.
The reality was that women were treated like crap in medieval times. They were bargaining chips between families, they didn't get to inherit, and they couldn't hold positions of power. At least not officially.
Many critics say, it's a fantasy story, why can't you just make up a world in which women are equal? And I agree that I'd like to see that more in fantasy, but Martin has written this series with a specific aim already, of showing the reality of the medieval world on which most of fantasy genre is based. It's horrible to see women being treated this way, and I understand why many people would rather not see it. But Martin can't be contradictory. Either Westeros is a Hobbesian nightmare, or it's a different series altogether. Women in the Game of Thrones universe may be marginalised, but they use the power they do have, whether it's beauty, wits, money, or a combination of all three. Game of Thrones shows women finding a way to deal with their awful situations and making it work for them. Why is this important? Well, over the last 20 years or so, there's been increased demand for representation of strong women on screen. And quite often what we got in return was overly sexualised, strong, independent women.
Buffy wasn't oversexed, and Xena, with her flying frisbee of death, was just ridiculous. But in both these fan favourites, their power comes from an external supernatural gift or destiny, rather than just being regular Jane Does. They aren't strong themselves as a result of their character, but by something thrust upon them. Xena is a demigod, and Buffy is predestined to be the Slayer.
Whereas Game of Thrones shows regular human women getting ahead, this is the sort of strength viewers can access for themselves, because most of us are never going to don leather corsets, fight Greek monsters, or stake vampires at the weekend. Only having strong women in these fantastical settings with fantastical means makes it appear that that's the only way in which women can be strong. These ideas are then reinforced in the viewers, both male and female. So I'm glad we have the Lady Does taking charge here.
And for those who don't gain power, they stay strong in the sense that they survive. They find a way to survive through the pain of the horror that's been done to them. Some, like Sansa, literally survive the constantly shifting court, being stuck in King's Landing as the pawn of other courtiers. Not to say Westeros and Essos don't have some badass sword-swinging ladies too, but when they fight, they wear armour like this, instead of this.
I think I'm missing a few pieces here.
Even then we have realism. Arya and Brienne are marginalised and made fun of because of it, and Brienne is still vulnerable to assault.
Note well. When people talk about strong female characters, I feel that channels are often crossed. There is a difference between strong female characters and strong female characters. Strong female characters refers to physically strong, like Brienne, or strong in leadership and power, like Cersei or Daenerys, or emotionally strong, like Sansa and Arya, for simply managing to survive. Arya is also physically strong. There's no simple categorization on Game of Thrones. So I'd argue that Game of Thrones has a whole slew of strong female characters. But all of those characters are also strong female characters, meaning that they are well-written characters who happen to be female. They're three-dimensional, they have personality, and they have their own voice.
Every character on this show, male or female, has a story, has an opinion, and fleshed out motivations for their actions. I've already said that there's no false dualism, but it goes much deeper than that. While we admire these women for being strong females, we also see their nuance. People can be strong but still lose. Sometimes they make mistakes. Sometimes they let their emotions get the better of them. And that's true of both female and male characters in this show. What the hell are you doing? What the... No. No. Rob, no. Stop it. No. Rob! Oh, you idiot!
See? This is why I don't want to be a Stark. Why is it important to have nuanced characters? Because writing cliches does us women no favours. I wish it were not so, but your viewing patterns do have an effect on the way you see the world. And if women are set dressing, plot garnish, or otherwise two-dimensional characters, that kind of reinforces the way you think of women in the real world. You've all heard of the angel whore complex, right? Game of Thrones taps that complex on the shoulder and says,
"Jog on."
Character study time. Cersei Lannister. Beautiful, icy, twincestuous, and deeply unlikable. Cersei is conniving and cruel, using Sansa to her advantage, manipulating her husband, and then quietly and unsuccessfully trying to control her despot son. Oftentimes, she seems entirely in control of her situation.
Seize him. Power is power.
You'd be forgiven for thinking her just another cunning, maniacal plotter in this world, but when you see the restrictions she has placed on her, and how she can only exert power through her relationships with others, you see just how good she is at playing the game. That is, until Tywin rocks into town. Despite all that she's done, all the power she's accrued, she's back to being her father's marginalised daughter, yet again sold off into slavery to another man. Which shows how fragile a woman's position is in this world, and you can feel sorry for her.
Jaime was taught to fight with sword and lance and mace, and I was taught to smile and sing and please. He was heir to Casterly Rock, and I was sold to some stranger like a horse to be ridden whenever he desired.
Her one admirable quality is her motherhood.
That in your cheekbones.
She loves her children, even when they are psychotic little woman beaters. She loses 2 of her children, and is on the verge of losing a 3rd. And who can't sympathise with that?
if Cersei is an example of a downward spiral, then Daenerys is only going up.
She starts out as a prototypical oppressed woman, sold to a man in return for an army, abused by her brother. As her husband and child die, she has to make it on her own, no longer protected by being the wife of Drogo or mother of the stallion that mounts the world. She is literally reborn in fire, which can symbolise her struggle, as the Mother of Dragons, and a slew of other titles. Seriously, how many titles do you have now?
Elector Targaryen, Zeoprosio Elos, Dorzalti, Merino Daria, Andaros the Aereo Varo Daria, Hen Parmenko and Basma Halisi, Balamont Prejatis, Simonia Zatruzotti.
People constantly doubt Daenerys because she is weak, without an army, and is slandered for being a woman. But time and again she proves them wrong. Like any strong character, she has motivation for her actions. She is determined to end slavery. She abhors it, having been oppressed herself, and basically sold as chattel. She always gives people a choice to follow her. Over the series you see her grow in strength and cunning, eventually pulling the mother of all badass moves, and doing this.
Dracarys.
She challenges the norms of her society that say only men can rule, and she doesn't try to adopt the mantle of masculinity to give her credibility either. She's not going down the path of violence to stake her claim. In conquering other cities, she always tries to minimise the casualties, unless they're slavers, but uses sneak tactics instead. Her greatest concern in ruling is fairness, and she is horrified when she sees the negative consequences of her actions, or those of her dragons.
Speaking of mothers, I think Dany's title, Mother of Dragons, and the freed Yunkai calling her mother, whilst a little white saviourish, is very meaningful.
Mothers are kind, which Dany is, always trying to be fair. Mothers are loyal and protect their children, which she does, trying to free people from injustice and retrieve her dragons, for example. Mother is a figure to look up to here. They bring you into the world, what's more powerful than that? And rather than the traditional medieval view that you bear sons and raise them to be great warriors, the Mother of Dragons fights battles herself. And have you ever been near a mother animal when her young are threatened? She will tear you to pieces. I love this emphasis on mother as a title of strength and awe.
Eventually, we have to talk about the less feminist side of the show. I can't deny that there's a lot of naked lady on screen. I love a naked body on screen as much as the next person, but from my vantage point it's more than a little male-gazy. Well, one critic coined the term sexposition to describe the show's regular juxtaposition of nakedness with info dumps. Because what's more boring on screen than watching one character tell another character their motivation and backstory in a long monologue? I know what'll keep people interested.
We're going to need considerably bigger buns.
And what's wrong with that? Well, the sexposition is super sexploitative.
Breasts are still the cheapest special effect. The nakedness has nothing to do with the scene, other than providing something pleasing for the eye. And the fact that it is almost always women who are the naked ones tells me this is about male satisfaction. I mean, it's not all male gaze. I admire the female form as well, as do many women, but these scenes make it about looking at women for pleasure, rather than listening to women for plot. And considering what we've just said about women being viewed as equally powerful and complex, giggling, frolicking prostitutes for our viewing pleasure kind of undermines that. Sometimes the sexy times are part of the plot or inform character. Theon Greyjoy shagging one girl, then accidentally groping his sister, tells us how much of a douche canoe he is, and provides us with a little conciliatory humiliation at his expense. Renly and Loras have intimate scenes exactly to demonstrate that they are intimate. The producers did not want to tiptoe around implying innuendo. They want you to know these two are banging.
Still, Weiss, Benioff, can we level the playing field a little?
Less of this, more of this.
The nudity is still a downside for me, but because of the badass Daenerys, the complexity of the female characters, and the reality of medieval life shown in this series, I think Game of Thrones has many feminist plus points. It doesn't show a world in which women are treated equally, but it shows a world in which women should be, for their strength of character and the fact that they can play the game, rule armies, fight baddies, and make mistakes, just like the men do.
Game of Thrones doesn't praise misogyny. It uncovers injustice, subverts patriarchal expectations, and says that everyone, even the cripples, bastards, and broken things, are strong and deserve respect.
It's far from perfect, but what is? Game of Thrones is on my list of top feminist TV shows. Let's dig into some pie. This one's for the patriarchy. Don't worry, it's just cherry juice. What's this? What? That dead dove's head's a bit dry. I think I'm just gonna have some tea to wash it down. So, thanks for watching Feminist Baking, and keep the flames in the oven. Cherry juice in my bra. Does not feel good.